Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon and watched the stars through the main window. He had been doing this job for 12 years now, flying between different planets and talking to alien species about their problems. Today would be different, though. Today would be the last time he would make this journey. The ship moved through space toward Nexus Prime, the huge station where all the different alien races met to discuss important matters. Jake could see the station getting bigger as they got closer. It looked like a giant metal flower with many arms reaching out in all directions. Ships from dozens of different worlds were docked there, each one carrying representatives from their home planets. Jake walked over to the communication panel and pressed a button. "Admiral Carter, we will arrive at Nexus Prime in 30 minutes, he said into the microphone. "Thank you, Captain Morrison," came the reply from Admiral Linda Carter. She was in her private quarters, probably reading over her speech one more time. Jake knew this was not easy for her. She had spent most of her life working with alien species, trying to keep peace in the galaxy. Now she had to tell them all that humanity was leaving. The bridge crew worked quietly around Jake. Lieutenant Bobby Chun checked the navigation systems while Ensign Katie Williams monitored the communication channels. They all knew what was happening today, and none of them seemed happy about it. Jake did not blame them. He was not happy about it either. For over 300 years, humans had been the ones who solved problems between different alien species. When the Zephyrians and the Draconians fought over mining rights, humans stepped in to work out a fair deal. When the Crystalline Collective wanted to expand into neutral space, humans helped them find other places to grow. When diseases spread between worlds, human doctors worked day and night to find cures, but humans were tired now. They had lost too many people in wars that were not their own. They had spent too much time fixing problems that other species created. The people of Earth wanted their government to focus on human needs instead of alien needs. Jake remembered his brother Danny, who had died 5 years ago during the Rigel border crisis. Danny had been a peacekeeper, sent to stop a war between two alien species who could not agree on where their territories ended. A stray missile had hit his transport ship and Danny never came home. Jake still wondered if those alien species even remembered his brother's name. The communication system buzzed with incoming messages from the station. UES Horizon, this is Nexus Prime Control. You are cleared to dock at Bay 7, Ambassador. Keth Morin from the Zephyrian Republic is requesting an immediate meeting with Admiral Carter. Jake pressed the reply button. Nexus Prime Control, this is Captain Morrison. Please tell Ambassador Keth Morin that Admiral Carter will address all representatives at the scheduled assembly in 2 hours. He knew that Keth Morin would not like this answer. The Zephyrian ambassador was used to getting what he wanted from humans. All the aliens were used to that. They had learned to depend on humans to solve their problems, and now humans were going to stop doing that. The docking process took 20 minutes. Jake felt the ship shake slightly as the magnetic clamps attached to the hull. Through the windows, he could see the busy corridors of Nexus Prime. Aliens of all different shapes and sizes walked past, some on 2 legs, some on 4, some floating in the air. There were tall, thin Zephyrians with their blue skin and silver hair. There were the insect-like creatures from the Hive Collective, their compound eyes glowing in the station's lights. There were the rocky, slow-moving beings from the crystalline worlds. Each one unique in shape and color. Admiral Carter appeared on the bridge, dressed in her formal uniform. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and tired eyes. She had been doing this job longer than anyone else, and it showed in the way she carried herself. "How are the preparations going, Admiral?" Jake asked. "As well as can be expected," she replied. "Dr. Roberts has finished her biological surveys of the colonies. All human settlements will be evacuated within the month. The defense fleet is already moving back toward Earth system." Dr. Amy Roberts was the chief scientist on the mission. She had spent years studying how humans and aliens could work together. Now she was helping to plan how they would separate. "What about the colonies that have mixed populations?" Jake asked. There are humans who have married aliens, and aliens who have made their homes on human worlds. Admiral Carter's expression grew even more serious. Those are personal choices. Any human who wants to stay in alien territory can do so, but they will not receive protection from Earth. Any alien who wants to come to human space will need to apply for refugee status. Jake nodded. He had expected this answer, but it still felt wrong. There were good people, both human and alien, who would be separated from their families and friends. The assembly hall of Nexus Prime was enormous. It had seats for representatives from over 60 different species. Jake sat in the human section and watched as aliens filled the other areas. He could hear them talking in their different languages, but the universal translators made it possible for everyone to understand each other. When Admiral Carter walked to the center podium, the entire hall became quiet. She looked around at all the alien faces, then began to speak. Representatives of the Galactic Council, I come before you today to deliver a message from the United Earth Government. After careful consideration, humanity has decided to withdraw from all galactic affairs. We will be closing our embassies, recalling our peacekeeping forces, and ending all military and diplomatic agreements. The hall erupted in noise. Aliens jumped to their feet, shouting questions and protests. Ambassador Kethmorin's blue face turned dark with anger. The Hive Queen Zix's compound eyes flashed with what Jake had learned to recognize as confusion. Admiral Carter raised her hand for silence. This decision is final. You have 30 days to make arrangements for any services that humans currently provide. After that time, humanity will seal our borders and focus on our own development. Jake watched the chaos that followed. Some aliens were angry, some were scared, and some seemed relieved. But all of them looked surprised. They had never imagined that humans would simply walk away. As the assembly dissolved into arguing groups, Jake wondered if they were making the right choice. The galaxy had been peaceful for so long because humans had worked to keep it that way. What would happen when they were gone? 3 months had passed since Admiral Carter delivered the message to the Galactic Council. Commander Lisa Hayes sat in her office on Luna Station looking at the reports on her desk. Each one told the same story. The galaxy was falling apart. She picked up the first report and read it again. The Draconian Empire had attacked 3 neutral mining worlds in the past week. Before humans left, such attacks never happened because human peacekeepers would have stopped them. Now there was no one to stop anything. Lisa pressed a button on her desk and called President Kevin Walsh on Earth. His face appeared on the screen, looking older than it had 3 months ago. Mr. President, I have the weekly report ready, Lisa said. How bad is it this time? Kevin asked. Worse than last week. The Draconians are moving faster now. They know no one will stop them. The Zephyrian Republic is fighting a civil war. 3 of their colony worlds have declared independence and are fighting each other. Kevin rubbed his forehead. What about the Crystalline Collective? They have started strip mining neutral worlds. They are taking all the minerals and leaving. The planet's dead. The local species are fleeing to anywhere they can find safety. Lisa turned to the next report. The Nexus Prime Station is a war zone now. The Hive Queen Zix's collective is splitting apart. Different hive groups are fighting each other for control of the station. Are there any good news in these reports? Kevin asked. Lisa looked through the papers. The Rigel system is still peaceful, but only because all the species there are too afraid to leave their home planets. Trade has stopped completely in that sector. Kevin leaned back in his chair. The Senate is asking me every day if we made the right choice. Senator Jackson keeps telling me that this proves we were right to leave. She says the aliens need to learn to solve their own problems. What do you think, Mr. President? I think we opened a door that we cannot close again. But I also think our people deserve better than to die for alien wars. Lisa understood his position. She had lost friends in those wars too. But watching the galaxy destroy itself was harder than she had expected after ending the call with President Kevin. Lisa walked to the observation deck. Through the large windows, she could see Earth in the distance. It looked peaceful and blue, just like it always had. But the space around it was busy with human ships coming home from abandoned colonies. Tony Blake was working in the engineering section when Lisa found him. He was a civilian engineer who had volunteered to help with Project Sanctuary. His job was to help build the barrier that would protect Earth's solar system from any alien attacks. "How is the progress going, Tony?" Lisa asked. "Better than expected," Tony replied, not looking up from his work. "We are using technology that humans learned from working with aliens for 300 years. The barrier will be stronger than anything the galaxy has ever seen. Will it keep everyone out?" "It will keep out anyone who wants to hurt us. But it will also keep us in. Once we turn it on, we will be completely cut off from the galaxy." Lisa watched Tony work. He was installing a device that looked like a combination of human electronics and alien crystals. It was strange to see human and alien technology working together when humans and aliens were separating. "Do you think we are doing the right thing?" Lisa asked. Tony stopped working and looked at her. "I think we are doing the only thing we can do. Humans have been taking care of everyone else for so long that we forgot how to take care of ourselves." On the other side of the galaxy, the former human colony of New Boston was dealing with its own problems. The colony had been abandoned when humans left, but the automated systems were still running. These systems had been programmed to help anyone who needed it, human or alien. Captain Rick Thompson had been the last human administrator of New Boston. He had left 3 months ago, but the colony's computer systems were still following his old orders. When refugee ships started arriving, the systems automatically gave them food, shelter, and medical care. The first refugees were Zephyrians who had fled from their civil war. They were followed by members of the Hive Collective who had been driven out by fighting factions. Then came families from the crystalline worlds who had lost their homes to strip mining. The automated systems tried their best to help everyone. They provided food that each species could eat. They created living spaces that each species could use. They even tried to settle disputes between different refugee groups, but the systems were not designed to handle so many different species. At once, they began to make mistakes. They gave poisonous food to some aliens. They created living spaces that were too hot or too cold. They could not understand the cultural differences between species. Slowly, the systems began to break down. Without human maintenance, they could not repair themselves. The refugee camp that had seemed like a safe place began to fail. Back on Earth, Dr. Amy Roberts was working on a different kind of problem. She was studying the biological samples that human colonies had left behind. Her job was to understand how human withdrawal would affect the ecosystem of different planets. What she found worried her. On planets where humans had lived alongside aliens, the local biology was changing rapidly. Plants and animals that had adapted to human presence were dying. Ecosystems that had been stable for decades were collapsing. The biological impact is worse than we predicted, Amy told her research team. Humans did not just live on these worlds, we became part of them. Without us, the balance is breaking down. Dr. Steve Martinez, her research partner, looked at the data on his screen. It is not just biology. The economic systems are collapsing too. Look at these trade numbers. Amy looked at the economic reports. Trade between alien species had dropped by 80%. Many species had depended on human ships to carry goods between worlds. Without human merchants, they could not get the resources they needed. How long before some species face starvation? Amy asked. Some already are, Steve replied. The Andorian colonies depend on food imports from 3 different systems. Those trade routes are gone now. Amy felt a weight in her chest. She had spent years studying how different species could work together. Now she was watching them die apart. The reports kept coming in. Every day brought news of another conflict, another system going dark, another species facing extinction. The galaxy that had seemed so strong and stable was revealing itself to be fragile and dependent. On Luna Station, Lisa received a priority message from the automated monitoring systems. The message was simple but terrifying. The Galactic Council had officially dissolved. There was no central government left in the galaxy. She immediately called President Kevin with the news. Mr. President, we just received confirmation. The Galactic Council is gone. There is no authority left to maintain any kind of order. Kevin was quiet for a long moment. How long do you think the galaxy can survive like this? I do not know, sir. But I think we are about to find out. Lisa looked out at the stars and wondered what they had done. 3 months ago, those stars had been full of life and hope. Now they seemed cold and distant. The galaxy was learning to exist without humans, but it was not learning fast enough. 6 months had passed since the humans left, and Dr. Steve Martinez was working late in his laboratory on Earth. The Xenological Research Division had been quiet since the withdrawal, but Steve had been given an important task. He needed to understand exactly what role humans had played in keeping the galaxy stable. The data on his computer screen told a story that made him uncomfortable. For 300 years, humans had been solving problems between alien species. But Steve was discovering that humans had been doing much more than that. They had been preventing something much worse. "Computer, show me the conflict patterns from the last 6 months," Steve said. The screen filled with a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked places where wars were happening. Yellow dots showed economic collapse. Blue dots indicated where entire species had gone extinct. Steve counted over 200 red dots, 50 yellow dots, and 12 blue dots. "Computer, compare this to the conflict patterns from before human withdrawal." The map changed. Now there were only 3 red dots, no yellow dots, and no blue dots. The difference was shocking. Steve called his assistant, Dr. Maria Santos, into the lab. "Maria, look at this data." "What do you see?" Maria studied the screen carefully. "It looks like humans were not just preventing individual conflicts. We were preventing the entire galaxy from destroying itself." "Exactly. But there is something else." "Computer, show me the historical data for galactic civilizations." The computer displayed information about previous galactic civilizations that had existed before humans reached the stars. Steve and Maria read through the data together. "Look at this pattern," Steve said, pointing to the screen. "Every galactic civilization lasts about 2,000 years. Then they all destroy themselves in massive wars, every single one." "But our galaxy has been stable for over 3,000 years, Maria said. "Yes, because humans arrived at exactly the right time. We became the immune system that prevented the galaxy from following the same pattern as all the others." Steve realized the terrible truth. Humans had not been chosen to be leaders of the galaxy. They had evolved to be the one species that could break the cycle of galactic self-destruction. Without humans, the galaxy was returning to its natural state of endless war. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, the situation was getting worse every day. The Zephyrian homeworld was completely destroyed. The beautiful blue planet that had been home to billions of people was now a smoking wasteland. The Civil War had reached its final stage, and nobody had won. Ambassador Cathmoran, who had once been so proud and confident, was now hiding in an abandoned space station with the few surviving members of his government. His silver hair had turned white from stress, and his blue skin looked pale and sick. "Send another message to Earth," he told his communication officer. "Tell them we are sorry for doubting them. Tell them we need their help." "Sir, we have sent 47 messages to Earth. They do not answer any of them." Cathmoran slammed his fist on the table. "Then send 48 messages. Keep sending them until they answer." But Earth was not listening. The solar system was now completely sealed off from the galaxy. The barrier that Tony Blake had helped build was working perfectly. No alien ships could enter human space, and no human ships could leave. The Hive Queen Zix was facing her own crisis. Her collective had been the most stable alien civilization in the galaxy, but now it was breaking apart. Individual hive groups were fighting each other for resources and territory. The Queen herself was losing control of her own people. In her private chamber, Zix looked at the reports from her remaining hive commanders. Half of her colonies were in open rebellion. The other half were too busy fighting among themselves to follow her orders. "My queen," her advisor said, The northern hives are requesting permission to attack the southern hives. They say the southern hives are stealing their food supplies. Permission denied, Zix said. We cannot fight ourselves when external enemies are attacking our borders. But my queen, the southern hives attacked first. They destroyed 3 northern food production centers. Zix felt tired in a way she had never experienced before. For centuries, when her people had conflicts, they would bring the problem to the human mediators. The humans would study the situation and find a solution that made everyone happy. Now, there were no humans to help, and Zix did not know how to solve these problems herself. On Earth, the human population was struggling with their own problems. The withdrawal had been popular at first, but now many people were having second thoughts. The news reports from the galaxy were getting worse every day, and humans were starting to feel guilty about what was happening. Dr. Beth Coleman was a psychologist who worked for the Earth government. Her job was to help people deal with the stress of the withdrawal. She had been very busy. I am seeing more depression and anxiety than ever before, she told President Kevin Walsh during their weekly meeting. People are having trouble sleeping. They feel guilty about the aliens who are dying because we left. What can we do about it? Kevin asked. Some of my patients are asking if we can help the aliens without getting involved in their politics. Maybe we could send medical supplies or food to refugee camps? Kevin shook his head. The Senate would never approve that. Senator Claire Jackson and her supporters believe that any help we give will just make the aliens dependent on us again. But Mr. President, we are watching entire species become extinct. How can we just ignore that? Kevin did not have a good answer for her question. He had been asking himself the same thing every day. General Pete Davis had a different opinion. He was the head of Earth's military forces, and he believed that humans should return to the galaxy. Not as peacekeepers, but as conquerors. Mr. President, he said during a military briefing, the galaxy is weak and divided. If we moved quickly, we could take control of the most important systems. We could create a human empire that would last for thousands of years. General, that is exactly what we were trying to avoid, Kevin replied. We left because we were tired of being responsible for everyone else. We did not leave so we could become dictators. But sir, someone is going to fill the power vacuum. If we do not do it, someone else will. And they might not be as kind to the remaining aliens as we would be? Kevin knew that Pete was probably right. The Draconian Empire was already conquering neutral systems. If they became strong enough, they might even try to attack Earth. But Kevin also knew that becoming conquerors would change humans into something they did not want to be. The debate was tearing human society apart. Some people wanted to help the aliens, some wanted to conquer them. Some wanted to ignore them completely. But everyone agreed that the current situation could not continue forever. Young diplomat Karen Mills was part of a new group that had a different idea. She believed that humans should return to the galaxy, but not as leaders or conquerors. They should return as teachers. We could show the aliens how to solve their own problems, she explained to anyone who would listen. We could teach them the skills they need to maintain peace without us. Most people thought Karen's idea was impossible. The aliens had been fighting each other for thousands of years before humans arrived. How could they learn to live in peace now? But Karen had studied the historical data, just like Steve Martinez. She knew that the galaxy was capable of peace. It just needed someone to show it how dope. The question was whether humanity would make that choice before it was too late. Every day that passed, more aliens died and more systems went dark. The galaxy was running out of time and humanity was running out of choices. 1 year had passed since humanity left the galaxy, and Captain Jake Morrison was standing on the observation deck of the UES New Dawn watching the stars. But these stars were different now. Many of them were dark. Entire solar systems had gone silent, their civilizations destroyed by war or simply abandoned by survivors who had fled to safer places. Jake was now commanding Earth's defense fleet, a job he never wanted but had accepted because someone had to do it. The automated probes that humans had left throughout the galaxy were still sending reports, and those reports painted a picture of complete collapse. Captain Morrison, we have received the weekly probe reports, said Lieutenant Nancy Clark, his communications officer. Put them on the main screen, Jake said, though he was not sure he wanted to see them. The screen showed a map of the galaxy. Large areas were marked in black, meaning no signals were coming from those regions. Jake counted the dark zones. More than half the galaxy was now silent. What about the Galactic Council? Jake asked. Nexus Prime Station is completely abandoned. Sir, the last transmission from there was 3 months ago. It was a distress signal, but by the time anyone could have reached it, the station had gone dark. Jake felt a pain in his chest. He had spent years of his life on that station, working with alien diplomats to prevent exactly this kind of disaster. Now it was just another dead piece of metal floating in space. Dr. Amy Roberts was working in her laboratory on Earth when she made a discovery that changed everything. She had been monitoring the biological signals from across the galaxy, trying to understand how the collapse was affecting different species. What she found was worse than anyone had imagined. Computer, show me the population data for the Zephyrian species, Amy said. The computer displayed numbers that made Amy's heart sink. Population estimate, 700,000 individuals remaining. This represents a 99% decline. From pre-withdrawal levels, Amy sat down heavily in her chair. The Zephyrians had once numbered in the billions. Now they were almost extinct. She ran the same analysis for other species. The Hive Collective had lost 80% of its population. The crystalline beings had lost 60%. Even the hardy Draconians, who had been winning most of the wars, had lost 40% of their people to disease and starvation. Amy called President Kevin Walsh immediately. Mr. President, I need to speak with you urgently. The extinction rates are accelerating. Kevin's face appeared on the screen. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the past 12 months. How bad is it, Dr. Roberts? Sir, at the current rate, we will see the complete extinction of at least 12 major species within the next 6 months. Several others will be reduced to populations too small to survive long term. Kevin was quiet for a long moment. Are you saying that half the intelligent life in the galaxy is going to die? I'm saying that half the intelligent life in the galaxy is already dead, Mr. President. The other half is dying now. On Earth, the human population was struggling with depression and guilt on a scale never seen before. Dr. Beth Coleman had opened emergency counseling centers in every major city, but they were not enough to help everyone who needed it. I cannot sleep, one of her patients told her. Every night I dream about the aliens who are dying because we left them. I see their faces and they are asking me why we abandoned them. We did not abandon them, Beth said gently. We made a choice to protect our own people. But what if it was the wrong choice? What if we could have found another way? Beth did not have an answer for that question. She had been asking herself the same thing every day. The psychological crisis was affecting everyone, even the government leaders. Senator Claire Jackson, who had been the strongest supporter of the withdrawal, was now having second thoughts. Maybe we moved too fast, she told her staff during a private meeting. Maybe we should have given the aliens more time to prepare. Senator, you said yourself that we had given them enough time. You said 300 years was enough, her aide reminded her. I know what I said, but I did not know it would be this bad. I thought they would struggle for a while and then figure out how to live without us. I did not think they would all die. The debate in the Senate was becoming more heated every day. Half the senators wanted to send aid to the surviving aliens, the other half wanted to maintain complete isolation. The arguments were so intense that several senators had stopped speaking to each other completely. General Pete Davis was still pushing for military action, but his reasons had changed. Mr. President, we need to act now, not because we want to conquer the galaxy, but because we need to save what is left of it. What are you suggesting, General? Kevin asked. Send the fleet to secure the most important systems. Establish safe zones where the surviving aliens can live under human protection. We cannot save everyone, but we can save some. Kevin understood the logic, but he also knew that such action would lead to exactly the kind of responsibility that Humans had tried to escape. If they created safe zones, they would have to defend them. If they defended them, they would become involved in alien politics again. Young diplomat Karen Mills was working with a small group of volunteers to develop her teaching plan. They had been studying the alien cultures, trying to understand why. They could not maintain peace on their own. The problem is not that they are naturally violent, Karen explained to her team. The problem is that they never learn the skills humans develop naturally. They do not know how to compromise. They do not know how to see problems from other perspectives. But Karen, they had thousands of years to learn these skills before humans arrived. Why did they not learn them then? Asked her colleague, Dr. Paul Wright. Because they never had a teacher. Humans learned these skills through our own conflicts. We had world wars that taught us the price of violence. We had to learn cooperation to survive. The aliens never had that experience because they were separated by space. Karen's idea was to create a school system that would teach alien species the basics of diplomacy, compromise, and peaceful conflict resolution. It was an ambitious plan, but it might be the only way to save the galaxy without creating a human empire. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The automated research station in the Andromeda sector, which had been operated by a mixed crew of alien scientists, sent a desperate transmission to Earth. The message was weak and broken, but it contained information that changed everything. Earth. This is Dr. Velanara from Research Station Alpha. We have discovered pattern in galactic history, civilizations rise, achieve space travel, then self-destruct in exactly 2,000 years, unless stabilizing force intervenes. The message continued with data that supported what Dr. Steve Martinez had already suspected. The galaxy was not just experiencing random violence. It was following a pattern that had repeated throughout cosmic history. Previous guardian species existed in past cycles. They all withdrew eventually. Same result. Galaxy dies. New civilization evolves. Cycle repeats. The final part of the message was the most important. Humans. Not accidental leaders, evolved for this purpose. Galaxy needs permanent guardians, or cycle continues forever. When President Kevin received this message, he realized that humanity faced a choice that was bigger than just helping the current aliens. They were choosing whether to break a cycle that had been repeating for millions of years. If we do nothing, he said to his cabinet, the galaxy will die, and eventually new civilizations will evolve. Then the same thing will happen again. If we return, we have to accept that we can never leave again. The weight of that decision was crushing. Humanity had to choose between their own freedom and the survival of galactic civilization itself. Jake Morrison received orders to prepare the fleet for a possible return to the galaxy. As he looked out at the stars, he wondered if humanity was strong enough to carry such a burden forever. But he also wondered if they were strong enough to live with the silence if they chose to do nothing. The stars were waiting for humanity's answer, and time was running out. 18 months after humanity left the galaxy, Ambassador Ryan Foster stood in the Earth Senate building, preparing to give the most important speech of his life. He was only 32 years old, but he had become the leader of a growing movement that wanted humans to return to the stars. The Senate chamber was packed with people. On one side sat the supporters of Senator Claire Jackson, who still believed that isolation was the right choice. On the other side sat Ryan's supporters, who called themselves the Return Movement. The tension in the room was so thick that Ryan could feel it pressing against his chest. Senators and citizens of Earth, Ryan began, we stand at a crossroads. That will define humanity for the rest of our existence. We can choose to remain safe behind our barriers while the galaxy dies around us, or we can accept the responsibility that evolution has placed on our shoulders. Senator Jackson stood up from her seat. Mr. Foster, you are asking us to sacrifice human lives for alien problems that have existed for thousands of years? How many more of our people must die before you are satisfied? Senator Jackson, I am asking us to save lives, both human and alien. The research from Dr. Martinez proves that this cycle of destruction will continue forever unless someone breaks it. If we do nothing now, our children will face the same choice in a few thousand years. The debate that followed was the most intense in Earth's political history. Senator Jackson argued that humans had already given enough to the galaxy. They had spent 300 years solving alien problems and lost thousands of human lives in the process. Why should they sacrifice even more? Ryan argued that the sacrifice would be temporary. If humans could teach the aliens how to maintain peace themselves, then future generations of humans would be free to pursue their own development without constant interruption. While the politicians argued, Dr. Steve Martinez was working in his laboratory with a team of researchers. They had been studying the message from Research Station Alpha and had made several disturbing discoveries. "The pattern is even worse than we thought," Steve told his team. "According to this data, the galaxy has gone through this cycle 17 times in the past 50 million years. Every time the guardian species eventually gets tired and withdraws. Every time the galaxy destroys itself completely." Dr. Maria Santos looked at the historical data on her screen. "Steve, look at this. The longest any guardian species lasted was about 8,000 years. The shortest was only 500 years. How long have humans been guardians?" Steve asked. "About 300 years if we count from when we first started mediating major conflicts." Steve felt a chill run down his spine. Humans were still very new to this role. If the pattern held true, they might remain guardians for thousands of years before they got tired and withdrew again. "There has to be a way to break the cycle permanently," Steve said. "We cannot just accept that this will keep happening forever." Meanwhile, the last functioning research station in the galaxy was fighting for survival. Dr. Velanara, the alien scientist who had sent the message to Earth, was working with a mixed crew of survivors from different species. They had barricaded themselves inside the station while wars raged in the space around them. "Dr. Velanara, we are receiving another attack signal," said her assistant, a young crystalline being named Corks. "The Draconian ships are demanding that we surrender the station. Tell them we are neutral researchers." "We have no military value," Velanara replied. "They say they do not care. They want the station's resources." Velanara looked around at her crew. There were only 12 of them left from the original staff of over 100. They represented 5 different species, all working together to preserve what knowledge they could before the galaxy completely collapsed. "Send another message to Earth," she told Corks. "Tell them that we have discovered something important about breaking the cycle." "Dr. Velanara, Earth has not responded to any of our previous messages. Why would they respond now?" "Because this time we have proof that there is another way." Velanara had been studying the historical records of previous galactic cycles. She had found evidence that one cycle had lasted much longer than the others. In that cycle, the guardian species had not tried to control the galaxy directly. Instead, they had created institutions that could function independently. "Look at this data, Corks. During the 9th cycle, the guardian species created something called the Eternal Council. It was made up of representatives from all species, but it had built in systems that prevented any one species from dominating the others. What happened to it?" Corks asked. "The guardian species still withdrew eventually, but the Eternal Council lasted for another 2,000 years on its own before it finally collapsed. That is 4 times longer than any other post-guardian civilization." Velanara realized that this was the key to breaking the cycle. Humans did not need to remain as permanent guardians. They needed to create a system that could maintain peace. Without constant human supervision, back on Earth the debate was reaching its climax. President Kevin Walsh had to make a decision that would affect not just humanity, but the entire future of galactic civilization. Dr. Beth Coleman presented her psychological report to the government. "Mr. President, the mental health crisis on Earth is getting worse every day. People cannot live with the guilt of watching an entire galaxy die. If we do not act soon, we will face a mental health disaster that could destroy human civilization from within." General Pete Davis presented his military assessment. "Sir, if we are going to act, we need to do it now. Every day we wait, more systems go dark and more aliens die. Soon there will not be enough survivors left to rebuild anything. Young Karen Mills presented her education plan. Mr. President, we do not have to choose between abandoning the aliens and controlling them forever. We can teach them to govern themselves. It will take time, maybe several generations, but it can work. The final decision came when Dr. Velinara's last message reached Earth. The message contained the historical data about the Eternal Council and a detailed plan for creating a similar institution in the current galaxy. Humans of Earth, the message said, you do not have to carry this burden alone forever. But you do have to help us build something that can carry it when you are gone. This is not just about saving our galaxy. This is about breaking a cycle that has trapped the universe for millions of years. President Kevin called an emergency session of the Senate. The chamber was more crowded than it had ever been, with people lining the walls and filling the aisles. Senators, Kevin said, I have made my decision. We will return to the galaxy, but not as conquerors or permanent guardians. We will return as teachers and institution builders. Our goal will be to create a system that can maintain peace without constant human supervision. Senator Jackson stood up one last time. Mr. President, how can you guarantee that this will not lead us back to the same problems we faced before? I cannot guarantee anything, Senator, but I can guarantee that if we do nothing, the cycle will continue forever. Our descendants will face this same choice again and again until the end of time. The Senate vote was close, but the return movement won. Humanity would go back to the stars not as reluctant guardians, but as architects of a new kind of galactic civilization. Captain Jake Morrison received his orders the next morning. He was to prepare the fleet for Operation New Dawn, humanity's return to the galaxy. As he looked out at the stars, Jake wondered if they were making the right choice. But for the first time in 18 months, the stars did not seem completely silent. There was still life out there, still hope. And humanity was going to help that hope survive. 2 years after humanity left the galaxy, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES New Dawn as it approached the ruins of Nexus Prime Station. The massive structure that had once been the center of galactic civilization was now dark and silent, its metal arms twisted and broken from the battles that had raged there. Captain, we are receiving multiple signals from surviving alien ships in the area, reported Lieutenant Nancy Clark. They seem confused about our presence here. Jake looked at the tactical display. Scattered around the dead station were dozens of small ships, most of them damaged and barely functioning. These were the survivors, the refugees who had nowhere else to go. Open a channel to all ships in the area, Jake ordered. When the channel was opened, Jake spoke in a calm, steady voice. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship New Dawn. We have returned to offer assistance to any who need it. We do not come as conquerors or rulers. We come as friends who want to help rebuild what was lost. The response was immediate and chaotic. Some alien voices expressed joy and relief. Others expressed anger and suspicion. A few expressed fear that humans had returned to take advantage of their weakness. The first ship to dock with the New Dawn belonged to the Zephian survivors. Ambassador Kethmoran was no longer the proud, confident leader he had once been. His silver hair was now completely white, and his blue skin was pale and marked with scars from the civil war that had destroyed his homeworld. Captain Morrison, Kethmoran said as he entered the docking bay, I am not sure whether to thank you for returning or curse you for leaving in the first place. I understand your anger, Ambassador, Jake replied. We made a mistake when we left without helping you prepare for our absence. We are here to try to fix that mistake. Kethmoran studied Jake's face for a long moment. What do you want from us this time? We want to help you learn to solve your own problems. We want to teach you the skills you need so that you will never again depend on any other species for your survival. The reunion was not easy. Many aliens were suspicious of human motives. They had been abandoned once and they feared it would happen again. But the alternative was extinction, and even the proudest species were willing to listen to any plan that might save them. Dr. Amy Roberts established the first contact protocol for the return mission. Unlike the old days when humans simply took charge of alien problems, the new approach required aliens to ask for help and to participate actively in finding solutions. "We will not make decisions for you," Amy explained to a gathering of alien representatives. "We will teach you how to make decisions for yourselves. We will show you how to negotiate, how to compromise, and how to find solutions that benefit everyone." The first test came when a group of crystalline survivors claimed the same asteroid mining rights as a group of Hive Collective refugees. In the old days, human mediators would have studied the situation and imposed a solution. This time, Amy and her team taught both groups how to negotiate with each other. "Start by understanding what the other side really needs," Amy told them. "The crystallines need silicon for their bodies to grow and repair themselves. The Hive Collective needs metals to build new ships for their homeless population. The asteroid has both resources." Under human guidance, the two groups learned to divide the asteroid in a way that gave each group what they needed most. More importantly, they learned the process of negotiation that they could use to solve future problems on their own. The second ship to arrive at Nexus Prime carried the remains of Hive Queen Zix's collective. The queen herself was barely alive, her compound eyes dim and her once powerful mental connection to her people reduced to weak whispers. "Human Jake Morrison," she said in her clicking language, "my people are dying. We do not know how to exist without unity. The hive mind is broken." Jake brought in Dr. Steve Martinez, who had studied the psychological structures of different alien species. "Queen Zix, your people are not meant to be completely independent individuals. But they also do not need to be completely dependent on you. We can help you find a middle path." Working with human psychologists, the Hive Collective learned to form smaller, semi-independent groups that could make their own decisions while still maintaining emotional connections to each other. It was not the same as their old hive mind, but it was a way to survive and grow. The reconstruction of Nexus Prime became a symbol of the new approach. Instead of humans building the station and aliens using it, mixed teams of humans and aliens worked together on every aspect of the project. Humans provided knowledge and guidance, but aliens made the decisions and did most of the work. Young diplomat Karen Mills took charge of establishing the new educational institutions. Her job was to create schools that would teach alien species the basic skills of peaceful coexistence. "We are not trying to make aliens think like humans," Karen explained to her teaching staff. "We are trying to help each species develop their own methods of solving conflicts peacefully." The schools were different for each species. Zephyrians learned individual negotiation skills because their culture valued personal honor. The crystalline beings learned group decision-making processes because they naturally thought in collective terms. The reformed Hive Collective learned how to balance individual needs with group harmony. 5 years after the return began, the first signs of success became visible. Former enemies were working together on joint projects. Trade was resuming between species that had been at war. Most importantly, aliens were solving new problems without asking humans for help. Dr. Velanara, the alien scientist who had sent the crucial message to Earth, became the first non-human director of the rebuilt Nexus Prime Station. Her mixed species research team had grown from 12 survivors to over 300, scientists representing 15 different species. "The humans have taught us something more valuable than how to make peace," she told the assembled representatives. "They have taught us how to teach ourselves. We no longer need guardians because we have learned to be our own guardians." The creation of the new Galactic Council was the final test of the human teaching approach. Unlike the old Galactic Council, which had depended on human mediation, the new council had built-in systems that prevented any one species from dominating the others. Each species had representation based on their population and technological contributions. Decisions required consensus from multiple species groups. Most importantly, there were established procedures for handling conflicts that did not require outside intervention. president. Kevin Walsh attended the first session of the new Galactic Council as an observer, not a participant. For the first time in 300 years, humans sat in the audience while aliens conducted their own government. "How does it feel to watch instead of participate?" asked Ambassador Ryan Foster, who had become Earth's liaison to the new council. "It feels right," Kevin replied. "This is what we should have been working toward all along." 10 years after the return began, humanity achieved its goal. The galaxy was stable and peaceful, but it no longer depended on human intervention to remain that way. Alien species had learned to maintain their own peace. Captain Jake Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, stood on the observation deck of Nexus Prime and watched ships from dozens of species arriving for a joint scientific expedition. Humans were part of the expedition, but they were not leading it. The stars were no longer silent. They hummed with the voices of civilizations that had learned to sing in harmony. The galaxy had found its own voice, and it was beautiful. As Jake watched the ships prepare for departure, he thought about the choice humanity had made. They had given up their role as rulers of the galaxy, but they had gained something more valuable. They had become teachers, and their students had surpassed even their greatest hopes. The cycle of galactic destruction had been broken, not by force or permanent guardianship, but by the simple act of teaching others to care for themselves. Humanity had found a way to save the galaxy without sacrificing their own freedom. The stars would never fall silent again.